Is list tailoring in wargaming a bad thing? Now, there's this idea. It's a little bit different depending on the wargaming system, where you have a number of points or a number of choices that you can select and build your army from. And part of that is influenced by faction or the type of missions that you're playing. But I can pay some sort of in-game currency. You can pay some sort of in-game currency. And we come up with our army. Now, there's a lot of different ways to build your army, and I've explored some of this and pushed it up to the Wargaming Tactics playlist. Sometimes you build a narrative army. You say, yes, I understand the rules, but I really love these miniatures. I really love these models. I really love this faction. So you manifest an army on the tabletop that it might not be the most competitive. It might not be that practical, but it's really fun to play, and it really has that amazing tabletop presence. On the opposite side, sometimes you say, I'm going to build a competitive army. I understand the lore. I understand what's going on in the narrative, but based on the rules, I'm going to pick the most efficient units that I can, and that's what I'm going to play. A lot of different ways to build your army. My recommendation as a wargaming enthusiast is to understand why you're building your army. Because sometimes you get into trouble where you build your army, your faction, your armada, whatever it's going to be. You've got a great idea, and you're not aware of where it falls within that matrix. A narrative army, a competitive army, somewhere in the middle. And then you go up against the opposite, a competitive army, and you get completely trashed. And you think, what am I doing playing this system? So understanding the idea of the list. Now we've got that framework. List tailoring is where you build your list for something very, very specific, for a specific situation. And depending on the venue, sometimes, in my experience, not in my opinion, in my experience, this is looked a little bit down upon. Like, hey, you built your army just to defeat mine. Well, maybe. And technically, if it's within the rules is written, completely legal, and you have the miniatures, you have the models, and you can draw that in, it's within that scope of it. A couple of examples of list tailoring or list adjusting. When I first started playing Warhammer 40,000, it was essentially basement battle reports. It was the four of us playing 40K. We would play Friday nights, we would play Saturday nights, and then during the week, you kind of built terrain, maybe purchase some miniatures, get stuff on the table. Sometimes I would take a couple of losses, and what was a little bit dangerous at the time is we had a great hobby shop. It was Dragon's Den on Central Avenue that sold 40K models. So it was very easy to head over there during the week, pick up some reinforcements, pick up some hobby supplies and paint, and have that ready for the table. So sometimes as our army and collection grew, the four of us playing, if someone added something new to their army and that was going to be a focus and I needed to counter it, I would go out and buy a model specifically to counter that. So sometimes in the dynamics of your group, you're adjusting and you're playing different things. Now, advance that a number of years forward, when at that point in time, I was playing at the Battle for Salvation Gaming Club, and there's a lot more army choices in 40K now, but Space Marines are still amazing. It's a good bet. Games Workshop has unlocked the secret sauce. I'm willing to bet if you're a Warhammer 40,000 player, you are playing Space Marines right now, or if not, you've been thinking about it and you will be playing Space Marines within the next 6 months. So at that time at the club, I want to say we had one Tyranid player. Necrons were like, I don't know, what are Necrons? Supposedly there's a Dark Eldar player, but we never really saw any Dark Eldar on the tabletop. The one Tyranid player, one or two Chaos Space Marine players, but that's kind of like Power Armor Marines. Everybody else playing Space Marines. So I'm coming in here playing my Eldar, and I'm looking at my list saying, playing on Tuesdays, playing on Fridays, I'm going to fight Space Marines. So it just seems natural to look at the units within my list and gear them up to play Space Marines. I'm not going against horde armies. I'm not going against armies with incredible mobility. Just if I want to survive the onslaught of Space Marines, I'm going to custom tailor my list for that. Now, let's advance that a little bit. Everyone playing Space Marines, at the time, star cannons. These were weapons in the rules at the time that could easily bypass the armor saves of Space Marines and other aspects that made Space Marines so potent. I had star cannons on everything. And other Eldar players would look at my list and say, bro, we love you, but you're nuts. You're crazy. You're paying, I don't know how many points for a star cannon upgrade. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And I was like, you don't understand. I am facing just Space Marines, and these things are designed to kill Space Marines. Now you go to a tournament, things might be a little bit different. Another example of list tailoring, sometimes we explored this in tournament tactics. You want to get plays in. You want to get your army down. You want to get your list memorized. You want to get everything ready. If you can look at some of the tournaments and the missions that they're playing, again, perfectly legal. There's nothing wrong with that. Some tournaments, so everything is transparent, they'll say it's 3 rounds. Each round is this amount of time. Here's a dice cube that we're going to give you. Everyone's going to use the same dice. And here are the missions that you are going to play. They might be randomized. There might be 4 missions. But you're going to play these 4 missions at some point in the tournament and the matchup. If you know those missions ahead of time, then you look at your list and say, is there something I can exploit? Is there something I can use? Sometimes if I knew the missions ahead of time for the venue, I would look and say, hey, this is where we're playing. Another example of list tailoring might be where if you have a network of gaming stores and clubs, often what you'll see is if there's a tournament or an event, you'll go and visit other clubs. You'll go to other tournaments. There'll be similar players that you will encounter. There were regularly, when I was playing 40K competitively, tournament players that I knew I was going to face. I knew there was a good chance I was going to face them. I knew the type of army and player they were. Maybe I want to bring a unit or something a little bit special. The last idea of list tailoring. So what we really see is this is feedback directly looking at your list and possibly adjusting it. Sometimes if we're playing competitively, where if it's a game system that is constantly being updated with releases, an example would be Warhammer 40,000, you might be approaching a tournament where Games Workshop drops something new, and of course they want to sell models, they want to sell miniatures. It's so overpowered, you just know, okay, look, they just dropped this whatever, and the tournament is 3 weeks away. Everybody is going to have this. They're going to be airbrushing everything and just put on like 3 colors so it's tabletop based legal, and you're going to encounter this. So maybe I want to adjust my list to face that. So my opinion is not that it's not acceptable or that there's something wrong with it. You can adjust your list. You can change your list. Sometimes if you're playing competitively, you need to do some of that recon and adjust your list. Sometimes if you're playing a friendly matchup or with your friends, not going to name any names, there's certain opponents that you're like, look, I can't lose to this person this week because I'm going to hear about it all week. I'm going to get random memes. I'm going to get pictures. I'm going to get texts. I just can't deal with that till next week we play that I can get revenge. So maybe I want to adjust my list a little bit. But this idea of list tailoring is where you have your primary army that you play at whatever armada, power level, C-bills, battle value, tokens, whatever it's going to be, support points, and you tweak it based on other units you might have going into a specific situation. Now to turn it over to my fellow wargaming enthusiasts, you've got your list to play. Do you adjust it for a specific event? Do you adjust it for the specific meta? Do you adjust it against certain players? What do you think about tailoring your list to something specific?